monsters were also spells. Hey guys, I'm super excited because this week's guest is House of Champs. I met him on Twitter. You guys know him. He's like the Market Watch guy and a streamer and just such a good person. Like, hands down, one of my favorite people in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. He is just like a gift to this world. And I asked him, like, oh, do you think you could teach me a little bit about budgeting and market watching? And he said yes. And so this interview is actually going to be featuring, answers to your questions about budgeting, market watching, what's the best way to budget, how do you know when to buy a card, how do you sell cards, things like that. Okay, all right, let's get to the questions. Okay, so John. First, would you tell us about yourself and your experience with Yu-Gi-Oh?
All right, so I used to be one of the bigger vendors, and I pretty much quit in terms of my experience with Market Watch. If I was personally vested and I'm still one of the biggest vendors, like, I would have way too much power in terms of, oh yeah, I'll cause a buyout and then I'll make a ton of money. It just didn't feel right. So essentially, I gave up vending in the scale that I was as media took off. I'm making like, $50, $70 a Market Watch in terms of I'm happy taking this rather than flipping card after card and doing all the office work. Also, I would say with vending, something a lot of people don't expect is the amount of office work that comes up with that. You're taping things, mailing things, cutting things, top loaders, making sure you have this in stock, that in stock to ship, writing name after name unless you're getting nice and getting a printing label depending on the amount of stuff that you're shipping out a month. It turns the dream of going and talking to people, having fun, and just doing trades into sorting cards by A, B, C, D, E. Anybody listening that has been a vendor will know what I'm talking about. And if you have aspirations to get up there, be prepared for the fun to get ruined a little bit.
Yeah. I actually used to run an eBay business selling Yu-Gi-Oh cards like 8 years ago when I started playing. And it was a pretty miserable experience. Like, my room was filled with like boxes and bubble wrap and things like that, and people were always trying to scam me. And I just kind of got sick of it. Like, I was able to make like several $1,000s, but I think if you calculated the hours, I was like making minimum wage doing Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And so
if you're doing it quote unquote right, the grind is pretty insane to make money off Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, if you're maximizing profits and doing it, and you can't really trust other people. This is stuff that people could literally just walk out of your house with and you're never gonna see it again, and that happens all too often in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was that Judge Judy court case famously. He said he'll get him in games 2 and 3, but after you've been up on Judge Judy, you actually lose the ability to appeal your case. So he's not going to have a game 2 or 3.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought that was fake. I didn't know it was like a real thing, but that's so funny.
You give up your ability to basically bring the case back into court because Miss Judy doesn't ever want to be overruled. There's very few exceptions, and usually she'll say, I can't make a ruling on that if she thinks it really needs to go to court.
Oh, I see. Got it. Okay, well, maybe someday I will go on Judge Judy.
So somebody in your chat has a pretty good phrase. One person once told me you sell or play if you want to do it right. I actually disagree. So when I won my jump, anciently, 2008, I had just been starting to ramp up vending. Like, I'll give the background to when I started vending. In 2007, I went to Shonen Jump Indianapolis, and I built up a lot of trades by that time. And so you enter this event called Gen Con. And Gen Con is the best 4 days in gaming, as they'll advertise it, but you pay for a badge each day to enter, and then that's 5 days of hotel. So I go with 4 different friends, we're splitting a hotel room, snuggling up to each other in bed, all that good stuff at night, and you never get the right amount of space whenever going to events, I feel like, if you're really going with a bunch of people. But basically, with all of that cost, I came back with $250 more and more cards in my binder. And I went, wait, I know I did a lot of trades, but what happened? And I backtracked, and that's when I realized I could actually make more than a part-time job at Little Caesars by trading, selling, buying. And by the time, just half a year later, I win my jump, I actually plussed about $2,000 cash, had the more trades. That was actually just working with the official vendors, by the way. That was like Troll and Toad was still able to go to events before they got blacklisted, and all these other interesting stories we can get into. But basically, I was able to plus 2,000 cash, win the event, as well as have more trades than when I entered that room. So it's like, if you're really doing the social aspect, I feel it does pay in a sense to be a player, because after I won, it got a lot more people to say, "Oh, you're John," and talk to me, because trading is largely a social aspect. In order for people to let you kind of quote unquote plus, a lot of people try to do I'm a vendor, I must make my profits. That's not a good social dynamic. Every time you hear that, you just glaze over and it's done. It's like, oh yeah, sure. But if you're just talking to people and doing trades and you're like, look, I'm only making this much, you show them, look, after you sell it on eBay, you lose this percent, and you also have the shipping fee, whereas I'm offering you this, you end up being able to make a decent amount of profit while still keeping the person you're talking to happy, and just be upfront with them. It's really that simple. So having that social aspect of being a player actually does help a lot of people be a vendor, but I do highly advise you play a deck that either wins or loses quickly. You don't want to be stuck up in time every round, because your purpose at the events, once we get events back one day, the purpose is to be able to end your round quickly and then go talk to people, network, socialize, and do the trades themselves. A lot of the bigger deals now go down in hotel rooms when Konami started cracking down a lot on people moving cash in the room, and you absolutely shouldn't be doing that. If you're moving cash in the room, you're putting your entire career in terms of buying, selling, and trading in jeopardy. So you want to be able to like meet people up at the hotels at night. I know that sounds risque, but realistically, hotel lobbies have a bunch of players at night if you've ever been to these events, and you go ahead and you start trading there. So you work your way up as a player and the vendor together. If you're only vending, I do think you're missing out on opportunities you would make otherwise as a player. Like Jesse Cotton's a great example. Jesse Cotton's actually right now probably the hottest player in the game, and he's also a major vendor with his own card site.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Sorry, I get off like that sometimes, like in terms of just popping off and frailing. Any questions? Sorry.
No. This is like what we're supposed to do. This is how this is supposed to go. We ask you questions and then you pop off and things like that. So.
All right. I get too excited over numbers and stuff.
That's good. Okay, speaking of numbers, so as part of my Road to YCS, I decided I would keep a budget. And the budget that I can do right now, because I'm moving into my own apartment, is $50 a month. Is this reasonable? Can I really play Yu-Gi-Oh at $50 a month, or do I need to do something else?
I would say absolutely, but you have to decide when and where to spend it. Like, let's say you're able to set aside 50 in a month. Well, you shouldn't necessarily spend it in that same month. And as a content creator, I know that might be highly disappointing to your audience, but if you think about it, 50, so that's a rate of about $12.50 a week. And so you get to your 52 weeks. That's a good amount of money. That's near $600, I think. I'd have to calculate it, but $600 within a year, and you'll have saved up for a meta deck. Now, in the meantime, you can use online simulators or improve a strategy you already have. And you can also, the hope is that you get good enough to start topping your tournaments and winning your tournaments that you're entering in order to get extra trades from OTS packs after you pull. So I think that like part of it is people think, oh, I've spent the money and it's just in there. Also, you don't want to become that tuber that just becomes an example of a deck. I know Yugi Nono kind of suffered being the Cyber Dragon duelist, and then people go, hey, where's my Cyber Dragon update? Yugi Nono, Cyber Dragon man. And sometimes he doesn't want to do that, but he still loves the deck, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to have that synonymous with you necessarily. So a lot of the time when you pick up a deck and you're passionate about it and then you move on, part of your audience who is dedicated to you through that deck and had that attachment through that deck goes, wait, what happened? Then it's like, it's time to move on. I'm a meta player. I want to win events. I want to do things. I'm sorry, the Dino DNA is not there for now. Maybe it'll come back. And that's another awesome example of a deck that became relevant again. So sometimes it pays off to keep your cards longer term, and other times you end up buying, selling, and trading them so that you can get newer cards. So it's like once you spend that $50 a month, it's not necessarily just gone.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think that's a good point about how I don't have to like actually spend the $50 every month. I can save it for bigger stuff. And then I do want to actually start selling some cards too, so that way I can increase my budget. But like, what's the best way to sell cards? Like, how do you do that?
So there's a lot of different ways, actually. I have a video on this. It's like buying, selling 101. But to sum it up, the Facebook groups are one of the best places, but you usually sell at around 80-ish%. Therefore, you just give up the fees and a little bit of a deal to whoever you're going with. You can also list on TCG Player and eBay, as you mentioned, and all these venues have the same problem. They're scammers. A lot of people love to give the vendors a lot of crap. Oh, they're just greedy, they want money, etc. But a lot of the times in this community, there's buyers trying to actively scam the vendors, and there's that ugly side to it. So almost all these options, you're open to that. And the same with Discord communities. There's actually buying, selling, trading Discord communities. We have one in Zodiac. There's one on Reddit. I think a lot of places have them, and they've dealt between all the groups. There's this guy who scammed for, I think, like $3,000 from Europe. Like, no matter where you are, it feels that. There are also buy lists, which are the safest option, which you can monitor, but they're not always going to give the best prices. Like, you have Troll and Toad, but they also offer a code like 40% trade-in credit. So their goal is to have you trade in and then get product or singles from them later, thus being on their own system, and that's how they're so successful. But sometimes their prices are up there where if you were selling to them for cash, you still beat the TCG Player / eBay fees when you send into them. So you do want to kind of pay attention to all the venues you have open to you. But a lot of them do leave you open to the potential, oh, by the way, I never got it in the mail. Did you use tracking? Like, an order under $20, you usually don't track, and people will go that way.
Oh, okay.
What are good to Facebook groups for people to buy and sell for people who don't know? Is that my roommate? Is that Jackie?
It is Jackie.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Black Market. Zodiac's harder. You'll get trolled sometimes, but if you ever ask a mod, one of our few rules there is to never troll a trade post. So you can have mods clean up your trade post. There's also Yu-Gi-Oh! White Collar, which I guess is similar to Black Market, but not as active. Those would be the three biggest Facebook groups I think you could move cards in.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Yeah, I think a long time ago I tried trading on Reddit, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Reddit, and like I don't remember the details, but I just saw like an old post where I was like complaining about it. So I don't know what happened, but I guess it didn't turn out well.
I used to buy, sell, and trade a lot on the Pojo boards, and there would be a lot of time wasters on there, like people who basically confirm a deal and then just never come through. Again, the same thing as scamming. This is as ancient as Gold 1 had come out with Dark Arm, or whichever Gold series had Dark Arm in it, and someone scammed me for 3 of those, which was 120 at the time. It's the only time I ever got on Pojo. Usually you could feel out who's scamming, but a lot of common things will be, you want to pay attention when dealing with people. If they refuse to take anything, like there's the option for goods and services, and then there's also friends and family / people you know, quote unquote. If they refuse to let you cover the fee for goods and services, they're highly likely scamming you.
Oh, okay. That's a good point. Yeah. That it's like on PayPal, right? Like there's that fee if it's like a business interaction or something.
Yes, that helps protect you. So if somebody were to try to say, you paid for the cards and they never shipped them, if you did somebody you know, you're not going to be able to fight and get your money back.
Oh, I see.
But if you do goods and services, you can then force PayPal to say, and PayPal will knock on their door and go, hey, where's the tracking to this? Why didn't you ship this? And if they are not able to provide tracking and that kind of stuff, you're going to be able to get your money back.
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. That's a good point, definitely. Okay, so the next question is, how do you know when to invest in a card versus, wait, no, let me say that again. How do you know when to sell a card versus hold on to the card?
Okay, so there's something called a reprint clock on most cards, and the megatins are the biggest tell, but usually a card lasts about a year in play before it's reprinted. The megatins tends to do 4 of the core sets, and now Konami's gotten way better at reprinting the side sets as well. Such as the Eldritch Golden Lord is already reprinted, right? But usually you have about a year's time. So like Rise of the Duelist, the cards have gotten super expensive, right? And Rise has been out for, I want to say, about 6 months now or more.
Yeah.
And so its clock is now ticking. You could start to see cards in Ghosts from the Past, such as Ghosts from the Past has those fake leaks, but I find that unlikely. Then, more realistically, they could be in Battles of Legend in the summer, because that set historically does go for cards like that, but last year it didn't. Finally, there's almost no way a lot of those cards miss the Megatins. The Megatins are one of Konami's key products of the year, and they reprint 4 core sets, which Rise of the Duelist will be one of them, Eternity Code another, Ignition Assault the first one in line, and then there's one more. I'm trying to remember which one it is right now. I believe that's the first one not in this year's Megatins would be Blazing Vortex. So Phantom Rage would be the last one of the Megatins. But basically you can kind of look at sets when they're released and say, okay, by X Megatins, a lot of these cards are going to be reprinted. They're going to miss very few of them. And so you then start kind of deciding, when will they announce those reprints? Like, especially for the biggest cards, which will have an impact. And then you also have to wonder, when will the actual reprints be revealed, thus lowering the price further? And then finally, when they come out, that's going to crash the price. So you kind of try to guess when that's going to happen.
Awesome. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So basically, one card I need is Access Code Talker. Should I buy it now, or should I wait for a reprint?
So what we can assume is that its reprint is likely within the next 6 months, which comes down to, how do I put it? There's a term for this, an official term, and it's depreciating value in a sense, but actually Yu-Gi-Oh cards can go the opposite and appreciate. So there's an amount of money you get into a card, and time is also money. So if Access Code Talker had just come out and you still are spending $60-$70 on it, then you get that whole extra time with it versus the money you put in. Now you're hedging your bet versus the reprint clock, which could be as soon as Goes from the Past. Because when we look at last March reprint set, they skipped past just Savage Strike and went to Dark Neostorm. They put in cards like Dengirsu into, it's one of the Duelist sets. There's so many Duelist sets. Whatever the March reprint set was, it's not, what's Dual Overload? It's Dual Overload. So Dengirsu ended up in Dual Overload from Dark Neostorm, and some other Dark Neostorm cards appeared that early. They skipped past just Savage Strike, which was going to be in the 10s, and did the second set. So right now, the sets for the Megatins are Ignition Assault, and then in line Eternity Code. They could put an Access Code Talker. They could not put an Access Code Talker. We don't really know yet. So you are gambling if you're throwing your money down on an Access Code Talker, but you're also gambling, like, if you hold off, that it has to be in there, or then you miss it and it could be in the next set, or it could be in the set after that. And then, you know, you're 6 months without an Access Code Talker.
Oh, I see, yeah.
There's not an easy answer, basically. You're gambling either way on it being in or out of the set.
I see. I just remember that, like, there was that card, Fantastical Dragon Phantasme, and
yes.
It was like $100, and it was like the hottest thing, and everyone was telling me to get it, and I was like, I don't have money to get it. And then time went by, and then it got reprinted, and then it got reprinted again, and now it's like $3 or something like that. And I was just like,
this is where it comes down to time versus money and the relevance. So Phantasme, after it's been reprinted a few times, has also, by the master rule, naturally become less valued, like in terms of gameplay as well. So Phantasme, when it first comes out, is super integral to the game. Everybody's link summoning. Then the new master rule comes out. People are still link summoning, but Phantasme isn't doing what it once did by that time. Another huge curveball that happened with Phantasme is Savage Strike got pulled out of the 2019 Megatins and got shoved towards, I believe, our 2021s. Which order did that happen? Savage Strike basically missed a Megatin, and so that was very rare. But then it got put in next March reprint set, anyways.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So if we actually pull up Phantasme on the wiki, we can see when it was released versus when it got its first reprint. So it really comes down to when a card's released, you make that snap decision on if you are getting Phantasme or if you're holding off. And from there, the price can go up or down and you can decide. But we see that it's in Savage Strike first in 2019 January, and then finally reprinted in 2020 in March. So a whole year and a quarter without Phantasme if you skip at first.
Uh-huh.
So versus, say, you had gone in on a playset on pre-release at 70 a piece before it had gone up, you'd be 210 in, but that $210 would continue to be used time after time again. And then when you feel like a reprint's coming, you can sell it still for actually a gain at that time. So you could have made money and gotten to play Phantasme all that time.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because Phantasme is like the reason that I'm just afraid to buy cards. It's that like, oh, it's gonna be worth nothing later, so like, why should I buy it? But I see.
Also, let's actually contradict that a little. Let's pull up first edition Secret Rare Fantastical Phantasme on TCG Player real quick.
Okay, let's do that.
First edition, highest rarity, tends to keep a little bit of its value. So you can see the unlims have fallen out, by far the worst, but we're on page 4 when we see the first one, and they're $20.
Okay, we have some questions from the crowd.
Okay.
Is it a good time to invest in Yu-Gi-Oh?
Okay, that's a very general one. There's several different Yu-Gi-Oh markets. So there's the vintage Yu-Gi-Oh market, first edition originals, they're not going to be reprinted. Then there's the max rarity market, which is kind of, if you're on a budget, what you're avoiding. You're like, oh wow, that ultimate construct sure is nice and shiny, but you can go get the dollar ones instead if you're on a budget, right? Instead of like, wow, she's my ace monster though, I want her in max rarity. That's what you're holding off on if you are on a budget period. And then there's the meta market, which is constantly in flux because the cards are changing, getting reprinted. What's important is changing over time. So you have those three different markets. There's crevices within all of them, but you basically have to decide max rarity and the old school cards are what's going up in general. I do think some of them are undervalued, some are overvalued, and they're going to be constantly changing. You've got to kind of decide, what collection do I want? How hard will it be to replace itself? An example of a card that I really dislike that people go after is the Duelist League rarity. There's a lot more of them out there than people think, and there's ridiculous buyouts on them. But people seem to think, okay, if I keep pouring my money into this, it's going to stay up. Whereas stuff like first edition base set, you say that and that's universal across all card games, right? Like first edition Pokemon base set's a lot of money, and it was undervalued in Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time, and now it's getting like on this hype train because people are looking at Pokemon, what happened, and saying, I don't want to miss the next Pokemon. All right, let's start buying first edition base set for the other big card games. The same as like with, I believe it's called Alpha and Magic. You have the Black Lotuses and stuff that are crazy, insane money. That is also to them their base set and their first run of it. So people understand first the base set, this is what I want, and they'll come in from other card games and kind of get it without even having an interest in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Okay.
So a lot of people are doing that right now. I would say it is a good time to get a lot of cards sooner than later, but you want to pay attention. Like there's on TCG Player, there's something called the market price. You can kind of try to tell what actual sale rates have happened. You can also go to sold listings on eBay and see what things have actually been selling for before just pumping your money into these cards. So you want to kind of try to get a feel for, okay, what were these cards going for versus the price they're listed at? Have they gone down? Think about why they might have gone down. Are they ridiculously up in price? Try to figure out what's up in price. A huge thing I try to push with my channel is people being able to realize these situations for themselves and come to conclusions instead of just constantly asking for the question and asking for it again and asking for it again. I want people to be able to come to these conclusions themselves.
Okay. That's a good point. Yeah, we have to like build that skill on our own so we can make the decisions instead of searching for the easy answer. That's a good point. Let's see. Your opinion on mega tins. In the past, we had tins with ace card guaranteed, so it's easy to get cards like Cardless, but do you think the mega tins are better now than they were in the past?
I never have an easy answer. Okay, so 2019 Megatins were some of the best tins ever. They introduced RNG, random number generator, promos, where you actually had a chance at Nibiru, Dimensional Shifter, or Dark Ruler No More, along with some collectibles. So they hit the meta players, they hit the collectors with special Kazuki Takahashi art, and then they also were a pretty good tin in and of themselves with the danger cards. 2020 took away promos. So they took away your chance to get that ace monster you're talking about in 2020, and that absolutely flopped at first. They put the instead new cards within the mega set to try to have you pull them, an extremely greedy move by Konami. And with that, you're chasing after Dragoon as the chase card, and at first Dragoon even flopped in terms of gameplay. Later it started to spur itself on and find its way into the meta game, and now it's like a $40-50 card. But initially that was a huge flop, and it still kind of is versus other megatons. Konami for some reason is trying to move away from promo cards. I don't understand it, but every other megaton before this has had promo cards, just as the other 10s did. They just weren't the focus of the 10, and I do think the megaton is better than the collector 10. But collector 10s, to their credit, are very much more memorable, especially as a kid. You're like, I remember finally getting Yusei Stardust Dragon out of a 10. And Konami's moved away from getting more kids into the game. Konami's gone from that focus, and I think they are more focused on adults. If you go over to Konami's online shop, I think it's shopyugioh.com, you can see the entire shop is actually more so focused on adults than kids. They're starting to get their target audience, and they've stopped trying to use that anime to bring in fresh blood so much, which I really think they need to. I think we need like a Sevens dub. We need something that gets that next group of kids into the game. But you can see here, it's more so like these funny office things, or they had a recent Valentine's one that was like Be My Valentine and stuff like that. So Shop Yu-Gi-Oh, they're doing coffee mugs, they're doing tumblers, they're doing more adult stuff. And so with that, I think Konami's kind of recognized like this Gold Sark 10 is going to more so kind of appeal towards fans of the show. Like a kid with the gold sarcophagus isn't going to be as excited as an adult who says, I remember Yugi pulling the puzzle out of this, right? It's more towards, I think, adults now a little bit. And a lot's changed in their office in the last couple of years, but I'd like to think that's part of why, is they do recognize the target audience at this point.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely not a children's card game as much as we talk about it being a children's card game. Okay, Shiggy says, if someone wanted to buy sealed product in bulk, what are the most valuable sets to do so? Like 10s, packs, special sets, etc.
Oh, this is again a hard one. So like most valuable in terms of like what's gone up lately, or most valuable in terms of what has appreciated? It's hard to get old school boxes in bulk. In terms of new school boxes, core sets are hit or miss. We look at Rise of the Duelist, which was shorted. You still could have got a lot of it if you had gone through the right people. That went very well. Toon Chaos is one I saw ahead of time. I was telling everybody to get Toon Chaos. It introduced a new rarity. It had a theme for the metagame. It had a theme for collectors. It was just the perfect storm to be an amazing box. But again, that also got shorted. So people might not have gotten their full orders they put in. It isn't always an easy path to getting bulk products. But I feel like different products either flop or do well, and that just comes down to what's inside the product itself. There's not a specific, like you look at the 2020 megatons, they've appreciated a lot. There's other megatons I want to say like 2018 that you can still get on clearance in certain stores.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
So there's booster boxes that appreciate, there's tins that appreciate, and there's also booster boxes that fail, tins that fail.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I'm kind of stopped buying sealed product because I have never made my money back. And unfortunately, the one time where I did pull like some good cards, I sold them right away, thinking that like, oh, I can get my money back and buy more cards. But if I had waited, the prices would have gone up. That was Rise of the Duelist. I pulled in a Deer Servant and a Shadal Schism, and I sold them both, which was like really dumb. But like now I'm just like, I don't want to buy sealed product because I just never make my money back. So I try to avoid it. But I don't know, you hear these stories about people making so much money off of buying a bunch of stuff that I don't know what to think.
So just like buying singles, buying sealed is just a bigger amplified gamble. When you buy a single, you're either betting, hey, this card's going to go up and I'm going to make money on it, or I'm buying it now because I don't think it's necessarily going to get cheaper and I need it for my deck. So like a good example is Ice Dragon's Prison. I thought that was undervalued at first too, but even as market man here, I wouldn't have thought that it would go over $20 consistently, and now it's a $40 card. So
Yeah.
even if you were buying it to resell, a lot of people would have been out at that $20 mark and then missed out on a free double up to 40, right? Like there's no telling the future. There's a lot of I would have, could have, should have's, but that's everything in life, including Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, that's a
For sealed, it's the bigger gamble by far, though. You're going, even with Rise of the Duelist had a huge miss secret rare. Oh, I'm gonna pull Emancipator Friends. Oh joy! You know, people had bad boxes to Rise of the Duelist, despite it being one of the best sets of all time.
I see. That's a good point. Okay. Okay, let me go to my questions then, because chat's kind of quiet now. Okay. Let's see. What is a good way to watch the market to figure out when to buy and to sell? Like you mentioned, looking on eBay, what's been sold and what are the prices, and looking on TCG Player, but is there anything else?
So self-promotion here. I do Market Watch, and there's other tubers who do follow the market, where you're able to kind of tell where cards have gone and where they're going, and then hear other people's thoughts on them. That's why Market Watch as a segment's pretty popular. People don't just want to hear themselves on a soundboard. They kind of want to hear, okay, what's this guy think of where this card's going, or the potential of this card, and oh, why has this card gone up? Oh, it's because of this weird interaction, or this YouTuber posted something, or this structure deck came out that I forgot about. You know, there's different reasons why things are going to move, and it's really hard to keep track of it all. Market Watch helps part of that, but it's not an end-all be-all. There's going to be cards that get missed. There's going to be cards, you know, that aren't worth putting on there that might have moved, or things that are about to sell out. We call it sales rates. You can kind of on TCG Player also tell how many sellers are on each card. So if you go to TCG, you're able to look at, let's say, the most latest set and scroll through all the cards, and you'll start to see, oh, this card only has 30 sellers where most things have 70 sellers, and you can kind of tell it's going out. Yeah, I would put price high to low on the top, and then that'll help you. Like Starlight rares are obviously a lot harder to get in general versus their competitors, but when a set first comes out, will usually be the maximum amount of sellers, because the set's fresh out, vendors are opening it, they're busting it with hopes to make money. But then you can like continue to go down and through and see which ones have way less sellers and which ones have way less quantities available.
Right. So if they have less quantities available, does that mean that they're more rare and more valuable? Or does it mean something else?
It can mean that they are getting bought out. It can mean that there's that it's more popular, or it can mean it's harder to get. It doesn't necessarily mean more valuable, but it can be a good indicator that something is starting to leave the market.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Okay. If you can invest in a case, should you?
Not necessarily. You have to make a really good call. And here's the thing I constantly warn my audience about. First off, you have to, people try to treat Yu-Gi-Oh! And their cards as if they're liquid cash when they're not. You still have to make a sale. you still have to consider the fees and the shipping, and shipping a case is a lot bigger than your typical mail day. And then you have to make sure that gets there in good condition to the buyer. And we know USPS loves to kick our packages around. So you are still taking a gamble when you sell it, not in hand. So to go in on a case, you have to really like the product, and then you have to know how long you're holding on to this case as well, because this is called opportunity cost. Let's say you have $700 to buy a case of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Well, you could have spent that $700 into singles, flip those singles within a certain amount of time, flip them again, flip them again, flip them again, before you ever could have had the case go up to where you're going to make a profit on it. So you're able to have a multiplier. This comes down to your bankroll. And with sealed, there's 3 reasons you go with sealed. Either you're lazy and you just want to casually dabble in a Yu-Gi-Oh investment and have it sit there. Because if you're not lazy, you're doing that flipping with your money and doing trades and all that sort of stuff. Or you're hardworking, you have a job, and again, you want to casually dabble into an investment. Like, you do not have time, because again, time is money. So you don't have the time to flip stuff because you have a job. But again, you want to casually invest in Yu-Gi-Oh over something like the stock market because it's something from your childhood, and you've done it before, you enjoy it. Or third, your bankroll is so large that it can no longer flip itself, and you need some long-term investments, and you're choosing Yu-Gi-Oh here once again. Those are the only 3 reasons you should be going sealed. Because if your bankroll is unable to flip itself, then you have cash just sitting there, and typically you want it working for yourself after you've set aside something like an emergency fund. So out of these 3 possibilities, a lot of people make the mistake of going, let's say, Rage of Ra. Rage of Ra was a Duelist pack, has the Ghost Rare Ra. It has the name Legendary Duelist behind it. Legendary Duelist has never failed. But a lot of people didn't listen to me when Japan changed the actual marketing. It was not a Legendary Duelist in Japan. I still think it was a good long-term investment, and it's starting to pan out to be that way. But a lot of people panicked when it initially flopped and just threw away their cases at a loss, saying, okay, I'll get 500 back after I spent 600 because it didn't look so hot at first. And with that, when you have so much money or your bankroll in one product and it's not looking good, people panic and get out. But if they sat on it, I say this, like a mother hen, you warm it up, you chill. Oh, wow, Ghost Ra's here? It's pretty obvious Ghost, Obelisk, and Slifer will be there one day. And now it's just Ghost from the past. We don't even have either of those, starting to hype up Ghost Rares in general. And it's one of the best choices for Ghost Rares of all time. That being said, it's the only chase card, and there's so many factors to what's happening here. You've got to have kind of a steel gut, be able to make that call of, okay, it's not looking good, but I'm going to hang in there. Or sometimes if you do that, you're going to lose even more. Like Phantom Rage and Genesis Impact didn't do too hot for themselves either. Rage of Ra is one of the other sets that's performing well out of modern sets that have been flopping lately, but you had to make that decision to stick in and not just run away from it, where in other places you would be losing out your money.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. That is kind of interesting in that I feel like people kind of freak out, and that's what happened to me whenever I pulled those cards in Rise of the Duelist. I was like, oh, I was watching them and I saw the price go down, so I freaked out, so I sold them right away, when really I should have held on to it. There's no way I could have known that, but at the same time, if I were going to do it again, I'm holding onto my cards longer before selling them. So,
and that comes down to a card by card basis. Like Access Code Talker, there were pre-sales for $30. The BLS link, there were $3 pre-sales on that. You kind of have to shoot your shot sometimes and decide, okay, this is going to go up or down. And that is still a gamble with singles. When you're buying singles, especially pre-sale, you're gambling. But a lot of the times it's okay to go, okay, I think this card is a good one to go ahead and get early. I'm going to choose that. Sometimes pre-sales are overpriced, they're overhyped, especially with ultras and supers. So this is more so with the secret rares usually. But Ice Dragon's Prison, $7, $4 pre-sales. You could have made a lot of money if you'd made the right call. And I say this too. Using a meta brain to approach the market can be a good thing, but it can also get you in a lot of trouble, because you can be on a card, you can read it and think it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread ever, and then it can just absolutely flop in the meta, do nothing, be trash, and you're out a lot of money because you threw stacks at this card that you thought was for sure the next hot thing in the meta.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I remember before Lightning Storm came out, at my locals, people were buying out Starlight Road because they thought, like, oh, Lightning Storm's gonna come out, we all gotta put this in our side decks and stuff like that. And, like, I had some because, I'm pretty sure I already had some because, I mean, that card's pretty old. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna hold on to this. But, like, nothing happened. Like, it didn't go up. No one plays that card. So, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Those back room, oh, this is the next hot meta tech you're going to see. Like, it can really burn you when you go in deep on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That being said, funny enough, I don't think Secret Rare meant Starlight Roads are that bad because there was foil scuffing on their release, and having the Secret Rare long term, there's a lot of past formats that play them, and they actually did come back during Zodiac format. It was so funny seeing that meta play, but I think that's actually not the worst card to have in max rarity. So a good lesson here also is, if you can afford it, your budget may not always allow it, first edition max rarity will usually fall the slowest and the least, and sometimes even over time gain traction, such as Ash Blossom first editions. I think they're around $70 right now still, which is barely under its meta, but they had dipped all the way to $35 at one point. So sometimes there's definitely a rocky road to a card going back up in price, but it'll happen. But you really have to consider the card that you're trying to do that with and deciding with.
Okay. Got it. That makes sense. Okay, is the waifu tax a real thing, or is that just a joke?
The waifu tax is very real, unfortunately. You look at Chamber Dragon Maid, is it taking over the meta? No. Is it doing anything absurd? It's a nice little tech in a certain deck. Was it $13 when the other Dragon Maids got reprinted and didn't even budge when I suggested it? Unfortunately, suggesting a Dragon Maid, my eternal rival on Market Watch. Yes, I knew she would defy gravity, and certainly she is. The waifu tax, 1,000,000% is a thing on Market. Dark Magician Girl is a classic, but also overplayed as the basic B waifu of Yu-Gi-Oh! You have just other cards that are sold that way. It's like, oh my gosh, it's a waifu. Yeah, it ends up being quite a bit of money.
Oh my god, that's so funny. I guess the player base is mostly dudes that like really cute anime chicks, so I guess it makes sense.
If I were to look at my audience, I would tell you it's around 98.2% male just off of demographics, and then most of the women that do watch are 40 plus, so I assume that's moms who monitor their children's content. I would say, if I were to think of a realistic number, it's probably 0.5% or less of my audience is female.
Oh yeah. According to YouTube, I think I have 1.7%. The highest I got was 9% for one video, but overall it's like 1.7. And I was like, why, women? I am a woman too! You should watch me! But, what can you do?
Yeah, the lady duelists are not super present in the community. There's tons of factors into that, between, like, I would never personally push my wife to play Yu-Gi-Oh! She's not interested, but even if she was, there's definitely uncomfortable things about taking a lady to locals, as it were, because of how the community can be.
Yeah, I feel that. I have a little bit of experience with that. But I think it helps that I'm older than most Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, so they leave me alone for the most part. Yeah. Oh, okay. How old are you?
I am 31.
I'm older than you. I was
Very
talking
few
to
duelists
Jackie.
are.
Huh?
Very few duelists are older than me.
Yeah, I guess I'm a bigger Yu-Gi boomer than you are, now that I think about it.
I've played since the very beginning. You thought I was 33? Most people think I'm younger on YouTube. For some reason, a lot of people think I'm 25 to 26.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a lot of people think I'm in my 20s, but that's also because I look like I'm in my 20s. So
I got my first ever pack at a Borders, which no longer exists, Borders bookstore.
R.I.P.
And I got 6 packs, and I pulled a Succubus Knight, and little 12-year-old me thought she was pretty fine, and she was my highest attack monster. I think it's 1650 or something. And then I got a left leg of Exodia, and boy, was I excited.
Oh god. I wonder how much those Exodia cards, the LOB ones, are worth. Because I really want some, but like I don't know if I should spend like hundreds of dollars.
They are quite expensive. The one thing about Exodia is actually he just does not have as much as an iconic presence, I guess I should say. He doesn't have as iconic of a presence as people think. So there's a studio called Taka, which released a full-sized Exodia bust. You can pull this up on Big Bag Toy Store, and it's about $1,000 for a 1/1 scale of Exodia. And they actually ended up cutting the edition size in half because it undersold, and they didn't really understand that while Exodia is iconic, it didn't really have the presence that Blue Eyes Dark Magician, Yugi, Kaiba, those kind of characters would have.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I would rather have a Blue Eyes White Dragon than an Exodia.
Which First for Figures has just released a Blue Eyes White Dragon figure.
Oh, is it the one where they have like one that's like silver and one that's like white or something?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that looked pretty good. I kind of want it, but I gotta save for Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Yep, you got to have your priorities. And that's another thing. Okay, so with saving up a budget, bankroll management is super important. Bankroll management is basically making sure your money is being kept track of in a way that you're not just spending it, like we said, on an ulti first edition construct instead of your dollar one if you're getting a Shadol engine. So when you're saving up, it's like this new set may have you super excited with the support and all this. You want to check yourself. Well, is this deck going to be meta impacting? Is this what I want to play at locals to win other prizes and be able to continue to grow my collection with? Or is this Stardust deck just something I really like because Stardust Dragon was my ace monster, like you say, when I was a kid? You know, you really have to decide where you're spending your money, especially on a budget.
Yeah, definitely. I know last year I was just buying the sealed product every time it came out, and I wasn't really thinking too hard about the money. I was just like, oh yay, I get to make box opening videos, until I kind of sat down and did the math, and I was like, this is really bad. I'm not making any money. I'm just losing a bunch of money.
Yeah, a lot of people think YouTubers make way more than they do. My ads revenue is now one of my worst funds of revenue. Streaming makes me the most. I do like have a love-hate relationship with feeling like, yay, the people power me the most, and then also being like, oh, this comes out of people's pockets. I feel a tinge of guilt, but thank you for supporting me. And that's why I always make my stream goals towards something specific that's around my house long term, like the mic I'm speaking into, my monitors, my desk, that kind of stuff, instead of like making my goal a meta deck that's going to become irrelevant in a year and a half and not be around. In fact, even the glasses on my face were a stream goal. So I like to kind of do things that'll be around for a long time, rather than a short time with that. But like I would rather be powered by the people than sponsors, and always have the people's interest before anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a great question. On new sets, how do vendors calculate the prices of cards when they start selling? Like, do they have a formula? So if you add up all the cards that the vendors are selling, you'll usually get a pretty similar number unless the set is either very good or very bad. Basically, the vendors are trying to cut up the ultra rares, the super rares, figure out what the hyped secret rares are, and cut the boxes up to where they're making a guaranteed profit off of the secret rares alone, and then everything else is plus. That's why sometimes very early you can get excellent prices on those chase secrets being undervalued, and as certain sites sell out of them, they'll see the sales rate, how people are going about it, and they'll up the price to keep some stock in, or just kind of play the game that way rather than just going meta. They're actually more so thinking, okay, if we hook it up this way, we make money every box no matter what. With Blazing Vortex, it was extremely alarming because the secret rares altogether did not pay for a case. So if you took every single secret rare, you added it up on pre-sales, and you multiply it by the pull rate of secrets, the 24 secrets you would pull per case, because you get 2 secrets per booster box, 12 booster boxes in a case. So you multiply it by their pull rate and then into there. I know it's a bunch of math, but basically you would see that the secret rares were not paying for the case anymore. And it was extremely bad for the vendors because then they're struggling to make money back. The ultra rares have extremely low curb appeal. They're not selling very well. And it was early telling that Blazing Vortex, even with a chase card, wasn't doing the hottest.
Oh, okay. I see. This was Blazing Vortex that just came out, right?
Yeah, Blazing Vortex is not a very successful core set.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I didn't buy it. Because,
yeah, modern sets have 2 secrets per box. Older sets will have 1 secret per box for the most part.
Okay. Interesting. Let's see.
And howdy, Scapegoat. How you doing?
I love Scapegoat. I think he's the most eligible bachelor on Yugi Twitter if we're gonna come down to it. We need to like auction off a date with Scapegoat and raise money for a charity. I think there would be a lot of takers on that one. Or, you know, hang out. If some guy wants to not go on a date with Scapegoat, but hang out with Scapegoat an hour, that would be dope. Anyway.
I see Jim Playmats in the chat. Best set is way too hard to say because there's best sets for different eras. Like a lot of new players would tell you Rise of the Duelist was insane. Then there's people who would tell you Duelist Alliance with that ban list where you have Dante, Construct, the Teller Knights all together in this new trio of decks was so crazy. You go back further, you have Phantom Darkness with Dark Arm Dragon and of course my card Six Samurai United. You go back even further, Invasion of Chaos. Magic Ruler actually has some of the most insane cards in the game and is one of the biggest updates, even though it's the 3rd set. You can't pin down the one best set. There's so many crazy sets.
Oh man. How do you like remember all this stuff? How do you keep track of everything?
I am like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Information sponge. Ever since Yu-Gi-Oh! Came out, I was super crazy about it, and I've also been very good with numbers. Like, if you tell me an era, I usually could tell you the price of a card during it, even then. And like, because like people will try to put a blanket price, like, oh, Dark Arm Dragon was $300, and actually that was mostly just at Costa Mesa at the Shonen Jump. For the most part, he floated around 250, 260, and would fluctuate down to 180, come back up. So like I can actually go all the way back. I've thought so many ways of trying to make interesting series around that, but being a Yu-Gi-Oh! Know-it-all probably isn't the best series in the world unless you have a good way to display it.
I don't know. I had a math professor that could do calculations in his head really quickly, and he did a TED Talk that got like 2 million views. So maybe we can get you like a Yu-Gi-Oh! TED Talk. That would be dope. But
how good was the GX era? The GX era, so that's kind of a weird one because you have like so many, like the GX era is technically during GOAT format as well. So you have a long range of the GX era lasting until basically 2008 when we get Synchros later, all the way from 2004. And that's a pretty long range of different formats to be talking about. Have I ever considered a job as an economist? I actually did take, when I went to college, I did take micro and macro. I did start out my major as business and switch to hospitality because UNT is one of the biggest schools for that. I basically had the plans to run either a casino or cruise ship and be in charge of those. And then I decided, well, I really like Yu-Gi-Oh! And I quit college for Yu-Gi-Oh! So that is kind of the path that my life was headed on beforehand in some senses.
Oh, interesting. Well, you're kind of like a Yu-Gi economist, I guess. What do you think of Ghost of the Past? Do you think it would do well?
So Ghost is it's in rumor stage right now. It's already selling over MSRP. It's going crazy. People are treating it kind of like those, is it called Hidden Fates or whatever, Shining Fates, whatever Pokemon has right now. It's one of the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Products selling above the belt, and we only know the chase cards. I think the chase cards can guarantee some level of craziness, and historically, the March reprint set is the second best-selling set of the year, past the Megatons, and this time we have a March reprint set with chase cards. I don't think it'll be a letdown. A lot of people are pointing out, well, what do we know besides all these archetypes that don't seem to be too good besides Shadows? We have a TCG exclusive premier archetype, and then we have 80 some odd reprints outside of the Ghost Rares. And I don't think those 80 odd off reprints will be disappointments. I think we'll see a lot of good cards in there if Konami is going to continue the formula of March reprint sets. Even the worst March reprint sets, like Duelist Saga, and I know I'm using March reprint set as the term. It initially was supposed to be in March. It got pushed back to April. Duelist Saga initially flopped and aged well over time too. Almost every March reprint set has been a banger. A lot of people got confused, by the way. Dual Overload is an exception. New cards coming into the set actually sold the set harder than the reprints, which is very rare for a March set.
Okay. How good was the set with Fire Kings and Mermails?
Is that Abyss Rising has Mermails? Which set has Fire Kings? Is it the same? Abyss Rising was really freaking good.
It's time to
Do you have a big card collection that you have and are holding on to, or do you just kind of sell whatever you don't want?
I currently don't buy, sell, and trade due to Market Watch except for OCG stuff. My OCG collection is growing somewhat ridiculously, and I need to slow down a little. I may have spent a little too much. But what my Patreon actually is also sending out OCG cards to people and growing their OCG collection with, like, ultimate rares we don't get here, or classic card arts, which a lot of the OCG market has also been exploding. So I try to stay away from the TCG market because it interferes directly with my segment. If I were to buy, sell, and trade, and I have, let's say I find a card that I see on market and it's extremely cheap, well, why would I not buy it all up myself and then show my audience, hey, I think this card's really good, I bought a bunch myself, even though I'm being transparent, I could have just given my audience that deal first, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I like to kind of stay out of the TCG market. I do have a ton of classic cards that I'm holding on to. It's getting harder and harder to, because I'm staring at them and I'm like, that's a lot of freaking money for what I paid back in the day, because I got everything from like 2014 and before for the most part. So it's like I'm just kind of staring at those cards like, I kind of, this is insane at this point. But I'm hanging on. I think they'll be going up a lot more personally.
Okay, interesting. He's got a lot of neat OCG merch. That's cool. Scapegoat sent me some OCG cards for my birthday, and that was cool. Okay, how do you identify which cards are irreplaceable versus ones that can be substituted? Like for instance, you could use Chalice instead of Forbidden Droplets. So, like, how do you identify what can be replaced?
So whenever you're replacing, you're still giving up an ability of a card. Like Chalice can only take care of one monster, whereas Droplet can take care of multiple, half their attack. So you can also have battle phase effects. Like whenever you're doing a substitute, you are losing out on an aspect of the card. Valor versus Impermanence is another good example. Well, Infinite Impermanence can also go in a row across from a floodgate and shut off a floodgate where Valor cannot. So anytime you're doing that, you are giving up something. It is not just this one for one, oh boy, this fits my budget deck. You are giving up power. There's a reason that other card has its value and worth, and meta players are after it.
Okay, yeah.
I know that's not the answer budget players are going to want to hear, by the way, but as somebody who's like been competitive, been to the summit, like played, whenever you're going to an event and you're playing for your life, you want every advantage you can have.
Yes. That is a challenge with me since I can't afford the best cards, but you do what you can.
At $50 a month, within a year, you will build the budget for a meta deck if you're setting it aside and not spending it instantly. Again, as a content creator, I understand the problem is that you are, you progressing, so spending here and there. But within a year of saving up, if you were to like hold on to it more, you would have the full budget for a competitive lowest rarity deck to be able to go and fight with.
Yeah.
It's all about budgeting and timing and deciding when and what to do and how.
Okay. Is it?
Yeah, Impermanence is a lot more affordable because it was its first printing that was not short printed finally in Gold Series. That was nice to see.
Oh, yes. Is investing in past formats worth it?
It's time
Yes, I think it's one of the good futures of Yu-Gi-Oh, but you have to call which past formats will be more popular versus which ones you're going to have to explain to your friends what's happening, how to play. We're seeing 2011 Plant get a lot more looks lately, along with GOAT format, of course, is one of the most popular. And you can even look at the history. There was a point where you could buy an entire GOAT deck lowest rarity for $18, and now that's in the 100 plus because Metamorphosis and certain cards just don't have a cheap replacement, and the popularity of that format has pushed it over time. Dekoichi is another card that has gone up in price despite its multiple copies. Like, there's just certain formats that if you had invested, it would be very good for you. And I touched on that with Starlight Road being, that card's kind of funny because I do think it's good. You know, that's something for 2011 Plant or other formats that you could be playing. Like, I think that past format has a bright future, and also it has the nostalgia factor depending on the format in terms of, I remember this card, I really like that card, and those cards, you know, people buying them because they know they're not going to get printed in that rarity again, and that kind of stuff. But I would pay attention to the versions I'm buying of the cards if you're investing, and try to get max rarity first if you are quote unquote investing.
Okay. Yeah, there was...
I'm an AI that randomly talks to her, Flame Velgard.
Yeah, it's a bot that I downloaded. It's super nice. It helps me fall asleep at night, too. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, so I have a Ghost Rare Stardust Dragon that my friend bought me for my birthday 8 years ago. And so he bought it for $30. And then now I think it's worth over $100. It's not first edition, but that's probably like the most expensive card that I have.
If it's Mint Unlimited, I think that's closer to $300 now.
Really? No way.
Yep. Go ahead and look it up. Near Mint.
Let's look it up.
So something that happened that I talk about is when new releases come out, instead of hurting the card, it can help it. Such as Starlight Veiler came out. It actually juiced the price of the Ultimate instead of hurting it, because people still go back and forth on, is the Starlight the highest rarity, is Ultimate Rare the highest rarity? So you can even see the market price is $300, and that's not from sales on the first edition. Only 24 listings on it. So the Ghost Stardust is definitely up there, yes.
Wait, I don't see it here.
You had it on the previous screen when I was looking. It was the top left on the previous.
Oh, this one? But this is first edition.
The picture is first edition, but it'll be all Ghost Rares. If you scroll down, it'll say Unlimited and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Wow, damage 112?
Yep.
Yeah. I know my card is a little bit warped, but I could probably flatten it.
Yeah, if it's warped but does not have creases / scratches, it's near mint, and you can fix that, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know. I bet my friend wouldn't mind if I sold it to buy more Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but it was a gift, so I've always held on to it.
Yeah, I tend to hold. There was somebody when I vended for Nationals, and I was able to get stuff from the booth later, like get some cards for myself. And like when I was buying certain cards, I got some first edition Demise King of Armageddon. That's the past format people aren't gonna want to play, but I got them for myself. And he's like, "You're getting these for you, right?" Because he's giving me a hookup price, and I was like, "Abso-freaking-lutely, I will be keeping these," and I still have those to this day.
Nice. Yes. Let's see. I also collected, like 8 years ago, I started collecting cards from the anime. Just like I just wanted to do that for myself, and so some of the cards are damaged because I didn't care about the quality at the time. But I've been thinking about going back and like actually buying like good quality cards. So one of the ones I have, oh god, it's like this trap card. It has like a mirror on it, and like you can copy your opponent's effect. It's like mystical something.
Mystic Ref Panel?
Yes, Mystic Ref Panel. So I have that, a secret rare, I think, and I think that's worth a lot.
Yeah, I think that's like, it was 18 last I looked, but it's had several buyouts. There are a couple of cards that will get rolling buyouts on them. Like Triple Tactics Talent, for example, is actually what hyped Ref Panel. So there'll be certain cards that have effects that just get themselves hyped over time because of Whisper. Oh, this could be meta. You could steal the triple tactics talent effect and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I do remember that this is an anime card as well. The perfect sweet spot for investing at times is if you have a card that is well remembered or from the anime and it has the potential to become metagame once again. Those highest rarity versions will spike exponentially each time that happens, such as maybe Blackluster Soldier could become meta again at some point somehow, and or like how Blackluster Soldier also got a deck and that kind of stuff. There's definitely outside forces that will spike certain cards and decks from the past. And that's one of the great things about Yu-Gi-Oh! Having the entire card pool always playable instead of cycling sets in and out of the game like Magic and Pokemon. Having that entire card pool available is part of what helps create this hype.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because people say, like, Magic's better because if Yu-Gi-Oh card gets put on the ban list, then the price just drops. And so you basically wasted money, and they're like, that doesn't happen with Magic, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Sorry, I was reading this guy's question. It's pretty long. Is it better to invest in cards that are really good in a handful of decks or slightly more expensive cards you can use in nearly every deck? So what you're referring to are called staples, which we don't really have true staples in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anymore. They're cards that can go from deck to deck, but it's not a staple means you have to have this card. And the great thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is kind of you don't actually need any specific card, but you do have cards like Nibiru or Forbidden Droplet that can be used by any deck, but you don't necessarily have to play and will be better in some decks than others. I do think it's better to have cards that can be used in a variety of decks, especially considering, like, let's say you have this group of cards you're going to keep and then you're scared of reprints. Well, you can sell the deck core, but keep your staples and cards that can go through other decks and then trade back into another deck and still have all this power for your deck in the cards that you invested in. So I do think that it is good to pay slightly more and have those more versatile cards that you're able to do that with. But with those quote unquote staples, you still have to watch for their reprints and what could affect their prices rather than just blindly hanging on to them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point too. How do you not get scammed? Like, for me specifically, I have issues at the card shop. Like, there was this dude that I thought was my friend, and he would get cards off of me. But I kind of got suspicious when I heard something about him, and so, like, after he was offering me, like, 25 cents, I made him look up everything and match whatever was online, and I found out that he was just lowballing, like, every single card.
All right, so there's a difference in scamming and just getting lowballed. It's still pretty scummy to get lowballed, but people are going to try to make money off you different ways. I used to call that being cut off at the ankles, and it's usually whenever that happens, that person's not going to deal with you again. That's why I always tell people to be upfront, and that buying, selling, trading is a lot more about, like, having a connection with people, because then you get return customers and people who come back to you, whereas instead of building distrust and like these relationships where you took advantage of people, then they're going to be wary of you or just shut down doing business with you ever again. So with low ballers, the best way to avoid that is to know your prices too. If you have a card, you should know the price of that card. It's the same thing as, like, if you're taking care of a betta fish, well, you should know how to take care of a betta fish, or you're going to wake up and it's going to be out of the bowl because they're jumpers if you just bought a fish bowl for it instead of getting a cover. You research what you have, basically.
Okay, yeah. I also found out that the card shop that I go to, the manager overcharges me for things. So, like, for example, I saw Dark Magician Girl, the Dragon Knight, for like $10. But I was at the shop, so I asked if they had it, and then he looked it up on his phone, and he said it was 13, and I was like, oh, I saw it for 10 online, and then he told me that the price went up, and then I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just buy it here to support you guys, and then I went home, and I saw it was still in my cart, and it was actually $10, and so, I guess it either went up temporarily for, like, 20 minutes, or I got overcharged, so, like, kind of what's the best way to deal with that situation?
Okay, so there's a lot of different factors that can happen here. I like to sometimes give the benefit of the doubt. When he looked it up, he could have had certain filters that would have filtered out certain sellers. He could have sellers blocked. But realistically, the guy thought he could make a couple extra bucks off of you, right? So shops are owned by people, and you will hear the phrase support your local, support your OTS store. And where you'll hear me talk about that usually is support your locals, but you should still be aware that owners can be scums and not the best people. There are definitely locals that people only go to this locals because it's the only one in the area and you're stuck there. Like, that's the freaking worst. You don't have options. And where California usually does have a lot of different locals, it depends. If people treat you bad, there's a point to mayhaps not just supporting them like that anymore. But if it's a good locals, good communities, then support extra. I would almost see it like tipping, like maybe buy your drinks there or snacks there or whatever. Like there can definitely be local owners that are not good people.
Yeah, the staff that I try not to work with the manager when I go there. I try to work with the staff because he pulls weird stuff.
So the manager, you don't know their situation. Maybe the manager makes a % on the sales. Maybe they have an extra incentive and a deal with the boss that if I make $1,000 in sales, I get an extra $50 or something. And they're going to work harder like a car salesman because that's how car salesmen work. If they sell at a higher rate, they get an extra bonus. Like there's all sorts of unique, no paved road methods to this industry, and you do not know what you're walking into with those kinds of deals. So you if you have a vibe, a gut feeling, you should usually trust your gut, right? That's what they tell you in almost every situation. Like, just kind of make a mental note, check here, see the next time, check there. You don't know their reason for being a hard ass to you. It could be they just don't like you, or they have a reason to make extra money off of you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I did check out another locals since I moved, and it's closer. But it's like really funny because when I walk in there, like it gets really quiet and awkward, and so I just don't really feel that comfortable going there anymore.
A girl! What Yu-Gi-Oh card is that? It's a legendary 3 of a kind. Kaiba tore up the 4th one. Yeah, that's it goes back to how do I say that? Let's the brief window into my dating life. You'll get those girlfriends that want to know what you're really up to, and you swear up and down you're going to locals, and they're like, all right, well, I want to go one of these days, and they end up finding out they're really just going to sit there in a corner or be next to you for 8 hours, and they regret their decision. But even then, like I brought one of my exes to locals, and this guy just comes up with me while I'm right there. We're walking out the door. Hey, really cute. Here's this card because it's cute, and I thought it's like you. And I'm like, dude, I'm right here with her. Like, what are you doing? Like, Yu-Gi-Oh players, they don't front. They don't give a crap. I've seen other people, like my friends, bring their girl to locals, and 5 people are in her DMs later, right behind their friends, quote unquote, back. I don't know what it is, but the rarity of girls that would show up to locals has this primal instinct, unga bunga, people going after them, and it's not something I've ever liked, but it's a thing.
Yeah. It's definitely worse when I was younger, 8 years ago. Now I'm old and scary, so that really helps. How do you decide which deck or archetype to play if you're on a budget, but you want to be competitive?
Great question. So before you take your wallet out, there's this little site called duelingbook.com. You could also go with Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. You build the decks, you test them in the rated ladder, and you'll get a feel for them. Like, for example, a deck I really enjoyed in the past was Shadows. I've also enjoyed Dinosaurs. And before I would, go out and spend my hard-earned money, I want to see if this deck clicks with me. Because sometimes a mechanic, it can be that simple. A mechanic doesn't click with you. Like, it's kind of like a fighting game where you have different fighting game characters, and you find out you really like one and you don't like another. Decks are the same way in terms of how mechanics work, and you don't want to spend your money on something you're not having fun playing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I did that. Like, I bought the Salomon Great cards a little too quickly. I didn't test them out fully. I just wanted a new deck, and I thought I just liked the artwork, and so I bought it. But it was really hard for me to play because I'm not very good at. And I know some people laugh at me when I say this, but I do think Salomon Great is at least a little bit of a combo deck, and so I had a lot of trouble.
No, you shouldn't be made fun of at all for that. That's literally what it is. You are not going down a specific route for combo, but you are comboing when you're doing it. You are going up a line and route of plays that can change, adapt to hand traps. That's absolutely what you were playing. You are playing, in a sense, a combo.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, I got laughed at when I went to. They were just like, "You think Salad is a combo deck?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's got a lot."
Yeah,
of
people
stats.
really like to actually and technically in this community. And the thing with that is, if you don't just push back a little against that, they'll continue to do that to you. That's one of the things that rubs a lot of people wrong with me. They think that I just think I'm always right, but I'm the kind of guy who's gonna just push back a little on the actually stuff. Salad has recurrence, they have routes, they have specific plays that if you open these two cards, you end on this board. That's called the combo.
Okay, hello, Rosie Rio. What's the best way to find and evaluate techs? Like, how do you talk to other players about the pros and cons of different techs?
That one's more deck building than market, but I can touch on that. So a good example, since we're talking about Salomon Great, good old Blade Yugioh topped his UDS, which is a premier event, with Enemy Controller and Salomon Great, which is pretty darn innovative. And Enemy Controller is an ancient card that a lot of people will remember from the show. Kaiba enters this special code to activate one
Left,
effect.
right, A, B.
Yeah, and so like the downfall of that is obviously you have to interact with your opponent's monsters, and it could be a combo piece or a hand trap or something else. Instead, this card reacts specifically to opponent's monsters. So basically, you just have to break down what the card does, its limitations versus your other options of, say, hand traps versus this has to be set on the field. They have to have the monster before spell and trap destruction, that sort of stuff. You have to evaluate what it works for. And the good thing about Salomon Great versus those back row destructions is you get a counter trap to help you protect from spell and trap destruction. So what does your deck do with it? And then what does your deck utilize it for, such as like Torrential Tribute and say maybe Altergeist or evenly matched Altergeist, those kind of things, those trap cards that can get extra abilities for that deck, versus say a deck where you're building a board and putting out 5 monsters that negate stuff. You don't necessarily want Torrential Tribute behind that. So deciding on techs and how to evaluate them, you have to first break down what your deck does, and then how that tech either assists or conflicts with that deck specifically, and what other options are there versus it.
So, is there anything else that advice you would give me on my journey on my road to YCS? Anything that you haven't talked about yet that you think I should know?
Okay, a huge mistake the general duelist will make is treating Yu-Gi-Oh cards like their personal piggy bank and then expecting to still have a bank there at the end of the day. Like, I always tell people in my streams they should have about $2,000 set aside for an emergency, a medical emergency, whatever it be, before they ever support streams or go in and buy cards. And people will have that $2,000 then go, well, why don't I just invest this in max rarity cards? They'll go up and it'll just be money. If something happens in your life, that's not necessarily the way, and the same goes with Yu-Gi-Oh. So I would definitely not treat cards as personal savings, and bankroll management is probably the number one mistake duelists make. Don't be scared to like save up, and then you'll kind of like drool right at that blue eye statue. Oh yeah, that looks pretty good. Not making mistakes with a bankroll is the hardest thing to do, and bankroll management is super important.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, I think there was a comparison about Yu-Gi-Oh and stocks, but like there's a lot of factors. Like, it takes time to sell the cards. Like, what if you have an emergency? You can't really get that money right away.
Also, people can smell desperation if you let it out there, so then people will try to take advantage of you rushing around for money too. Like, you would think the pity story would help, but in fact, usually it does the opposite. Like, oh, you need the money? 50%, brother. Like, people will try to act like that usually instead of being compassionate whenever a collectible is being sold for a medical emergency.
Okay. Great. Very good points. Okay. Anything else?
Be respectful to other duelists and be careful with your money. That's about it.
Well, thank you so much, John. I like super appreciate it. That is
No problem at all.
So nice of you to help me out on this road to YCS, and I learned so much. And I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna listen to it again so I can take notes and things like that.
No problem at all.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you so much. You are the best.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Okay, take care. Bye.